Tensions are boiling. Prominent lawyer Makebi Zulu is facing backlash as the government, led by the Attorney General, fights to stop Edgar Lungu's burial in South Africa. What's behind this dramatic legal and political clash? Breaking news: the Zambian government, through the Attorney General, is reportedly working to block the burial of former President Edgar Lungu in South Africa. Lawyer Makebi Zulu is now facing public and political pressure for defending the Lungu family in this intense legal showdown. Balance scale: why is the burial being challenged? Speaking head: what role is Makebi Zulu playing? Zambia, is this legal, political, or both? Find out in this hard-hitting political expose from InspirAfrica official. The ex-post you referenced suggests a specific scenario where Zambia's Attorney General filed a lawsuit in Pretoria High Court to oppose ECL's likely Edgar Lungu burial, naming Esther, the kids, Makebi Zulu, and a hospital as defendants. However, this post raises red flags. Pretoria is in South Africa, not Zambia, and no credible reports confirm Lungu's death as of June 25, 2025. This suggests the post may be misinformation, a satirical claim, or a misunderstanding. For accuracy, I'll treat the burial dispute as a hypothetical or related to a PF figure, using the post's details cautiously and cross-referencing with Zambia's legal and political context. I'll also avoid directly quoting the post for guidelines and label its information as inconclusive. Below, I'll address each topic in greater depth, incorporating historical context, legal frameworks, political analysis, and public sentiment, while critically examining the narrative and potential biases in available information. 1. Why is the burial being challenged? The challenge to the burial, framed as involving Lungu, assumed to be Edgar Lungu or a related figure, is a complex issue rooted in Zambia's legal, political, and cultural landscape. Without confirmed reports of Lungu's death, the challenge may pertain to a symbolic event, another PF figure's funeral, or a speculative scenario amplified by social media. Below, I explore the multifaceted reasons for such a challenge, drawing on Zambia's governance structures, cultural norms, and political tensions. Legal grounds for the challenge. The Zambian government, likely acting through Attorney General Kabesha, could challenge a burial on several legal bases. Public Order Act. Zambia's Public Order Act 1955, amended, requires permits for public gatherings, including funerals that attract large crowds. If the burial is planned as a major event, the government might argue it lacks authorization or poses a security risk. For instance, funerals of prominent figures like former presidents often draw thousands, potentially leading to unrest in a polarized climate. State funeral protocols. The Zambian constitution and subsidiary laws, such as the Benefits of Former Presidents Act 1998, outline state responsibilities for former presidents' funerals. If the deceased is Lungu or a state figure, the government may insist on controlling arrangements to ensure compliance with protocols, such as funding or venue choices. Disputes over who organizes the funeral, state, family, or political allies, could prompt legal action. Health regulations. If a hospital is involved, as suggested by the ex-post, health laws under the Public Health Act 1930, amended, might be cited, especially if the body's storage or release is contested. For example, the government could claim the hospital lacks authority to release the body pending legal clarity. Jurisdictional disputes. The ex-post's mention of Pretoria High Court is anomalous, as Zambia's High Court or Constitutional Court would typically handle such cases. This suggests either a cross-border legal issue, e.g., if Lungu died abroad, or misinformation. In Zambia, jurisdictional disputes between state and private entities could arise if the family or PF insists on private arrangements. Political motivations. The challenge is likely driven by political considerations, given Zambia's polarized environment. UPND-PF rivalry. Since Akane Hichilema's United Party for National Development (UPND) defeated Lungu's Patriotic Front (PF) in 2021, tensions have escalated. The UPND has pursued anti-corruption probes against PF leaders, while PF accuses the government of political persecution. A high-profile funeral could serve as a platform for PF to rally supporters, prompting UPND to intervene. Electoral strategy. With Zambia's 2026 elections looming, both parties are maneuvering for advantage. A funeral could amplify PF's narrative of victimhood, portraying UPND as authoritarian. Conversely, UPND might frame its actions as upholding law and order, appealing to its base. Control of narrative. Funerals in Zambia are not just personal but public spectacles that shape legacies. If the deceased is Lungu, his burial would be a battleground for defining his presidency 2015 to 2021, which was marked by economic challenges and democratic backsliding. UPND might seek to limit PF's ability to glorify Lungu's tenure. Cultural and traditional factors. Zambian funerals are deeply cultural, involving traditional leaders, clans, and community rituals. Challenges could arise from traditional authority conflicts. Chiefs, such as those from the Bemba or Lozi ethnic groups, often oversee funeral rites for prominent figures. If the government's plans clash with traditional expectations, e.g., burial location or rituals, chiefs might resist, escalating the dispute. Family disputes. If the family, e.g., Esther and the kids for the ex-post, disagrees with state arrangements, they could challenge the government's authority, invoking cultural rites to bury their kin as they see fit. Public sentiment. Zambians view funerals as sacrosanct, and state interference could be seen as almost disrespectful, fueling public backlash. This is especially true if the deceased is a revered figure like Lungu, who retains support in urban and northern regions. Security concerns. High-profile funerals can destabilize Zambia's fragile political climate. Risk of protests. PF supporters concentrated in Lusaka and the Copperbelt might protest government interference, leading to clashes with police. Past PF rallies have turned violent, as seen during the 2020 to 2021 election campaign. Regional tensions. Zambia's ethnic regional divides, e.g., Bemba-dominated North versus Tonga-dominated South, could be exacerbated if the burial is perceived as a slight against a particular group. Potential misinformation. The ex-post's inconsistencies, e.g., Pretoria venue, suggest the burial challenge may be exaggerated or fabricated. Zambia's media landscape is rife with partisan narratives, and social media amplifies unverified claims. The government's action might be a response to a smaller issue, like a PF-organized event, misconstrued as a burial dispute. 2. What role is Makebi Zulu playing? Makebi Zulu, a prominent Zambian lawyer and PF stalwart, is likely a central figure in opposing the government's challenge. His role spans legal advocacy, political strategy, and public mobilization, reflecting his dual identity as a seasoned attorney and PF loyalist. Legal advocacy. Zulu's primary role is as a defense attorney for the defendants, who may include the deceased's family, PF leaders, or associated institutions, e.g., the hospital. His legal strategies could include constitutional challenges. Zulu might argue that the government's actions violate Articles 18, Freedom of Assembly, and 21, Freedom of Association of Zambia's Constitution, 2016. He could file for an injunction in Zambia's High Court to halt state interference, citing precedent from cases like Hichilema versus Lungu, 2016, where constitutional rights were debated. Judicial review. If the government relies on executive orders or statutory instruments, Zulu could seek a judicial review, questioning their legality. For instance, if the Public Order Act is invoked, he might argue it's being misapplied to suppress cultural or political expression. International angle. The ex-post's Pretoria reference is dubious, but if the case has a cross-border element, e.g., Lungu's body in South Africa, Zulu might engage South African courts or international human rights bodies, though this is unlikely given Zambia's sovereignty concerns. Political strategy. As a PF member, Zulu's involvement is inherently political. Defending PF's interests. Zulu likely represents PF's broader agenda, using the burial dispute to rally supporters and discredit UPND. His legal filings would frame the government as authoritarian, resonating with PF's narrative of persecution. Media engagement. Zulu is known for his media presence, often giving interviews to outlets like Zambia Reports or Lusaka Times. He would use platforms to amplify PF's position, accusing UPND of disrespecting the deceased or violating cultural norms. Mobilizing support. By publicizing the case, Zulu could galvanize PF's base, especially in urban strongholds, to protest or pressure the government. This mirrors his role in past PF campaigns, such as defending Lungu's 2021 candidacy. Public persona and influence. Zulu's reputation as a fearless lawyer enhances his impact. Track record. He has defended Lungu and other PF figures in high-stakes cases, including corruption probes and electoral disputes. His success in delaying or overturning government actions, e.g., Lungu's eligibility case, makes him a trusted PF ally. Symbol of resistance. For PF supporters, Zulu embodies resistance to UPND's alleged vendettas. His involvement signals that the burial dispute is a serious fight, not a minor legal issue. Risks. Zulu's outspokenness could provoke government retaliation, such as disbarment threats or arrests, as seen with other PF-aligned lawyers. His dual role also risks blurring legal and political lines, potentially undermining his courtroom credibility. Hypothetical context. If the ex-post's defendants, Esther, Kids, Hospital, are accurate, Zulu might be coordinating a multi-party defense, balancing family wishes with PF's political goals. Esther Lungu, Edgar's wife, has faced legal scrutiny, e.g., 2023 asset seizure cases, which Zulu has also defended. His role would thus extend to protecting the family's interests while advancing PF's agenda. 3. Is this legal, political, or both? The burial challenge is unequivocally both legal and political, with each dimension reinforcing the other in Zambia's contentious environment. Legal dimension. The dispute hinges on competing interpretations of Zambian law. Constitutional rights versus state authority. The government may cite its duty to maintain public order, Article 193, Constitution, or regulate state funerals, while defendants argue for personal and cultural rights, Articles 19, 23. The High Court or Constitutional Court would arbitrate, but Zambia's judiciary faces accusations of UPND bias, complicating impartiality. Statutory framework. Laws like the Public Order Act or benefits of Former President's Act provide the government leverage, but their application to private funerals is debatable. Zulu could exploit ambiguities to challenge state overreach. Precedents. Past cases, such as Mutal versus State 2018 on public gatherings, suggest courts often uphold state restrictions but can rule against the government if rights violations are clear. The burial case's outcome depends on judicial courage and public pressure. Political dimension. The legal fight is a proxy for deeper political struggles. UPND's consolidation. Since 2021, UPND has sought to dismantle PF's influence through arrests, asset seizures, and electoral reforms. Blocking a PF-linked funeral aligns with this strategy, signaling dominance but risking backlash. PF's resurgence. PF, weakened by internal splits and legal battles, sees the dispute as a chance to regroup. By framing UPND as heartless, PF could regain sympathy, especially if the deceased is a beloved figure. Ethnic and regional dynamics. Zambia's politics often align with ethnic regional identities, e.g. Bemba PF support versus Tonga UPND base. A burial dispute could inflame these divides, particularly if it's seen as targeting a Bemba or Eastern figure like Lungu. Interplay of law and politics. The legal and political dimensions are inseparable. Judicial pressure. UPND's influence over appointments, e.g. constitutional court judges, could sway rulings, but overt bias risks delegitimizing the judiciary. PF's legal team, led by Zulu, would exploit this to rally public opinion. Public perception. Legal arguments are secondary to how the dispute plays out in public. If UPND's actions are seen as disrespectful, it could lose swing voters. PF's success depends on framing the case as a moral outrage, not just a legal fight. International scrutiny. Zambia's democratic backsliding under Lungu drew global attention, and UPND's handling has been watched closely. A mishandled burial dispute could invite criticism from SADC or human rights groups, forcing legal restraint. The dispute's resolution will reflect Zambia's ability to separate law from politics, a challenge given the stakes involved. 4. Breaking. Government moves to stop Lungu's burial. The breaking claim that the government is stopping Lungu's burial is a dramatic development, but its veracity is questionable given the lack of corroborating evidence and the ex-post's errors. Below, I analyze the scenario, assuming it involves Edgar Lungu or a PF figure, and explore its implications. Context and plausibility. Lungu's status. As of June 25, 2025, no credible sources report Edgar Lungu's death. Lungu, aged 68, has been active in PF politics, challenging UPND through rallies and legal battles. A burial dispute involving him is thus speculative unless new evidence emerges. Alternative scenarios. The Lungu reference could mean a relative, a PF ally, or a symbolic event, e.g. a mock funeral to protest Lungu's political marginalization. Alternatively, it might be misinformation spread by partisan actors, a common tactic in Zambia's media wars. Pretoria anomaly. The ex-post's claim of a lawsuit in Pretoria High Court is implausible, as Zambia's courts have jurisdiction over domestic matters. This suggests the post may be satirical or confused, possibly conflating a South African case with Zambian events. A plausible scenario is a Zambian High Court filing, misreported on X. Government's actions. If the government is challenging a burial, its actions might include court injunction. Attorney General Kabesha could seek an injunction to delay the funeral, citing legal or security concerns. This would involve naming defendants like the family or PF organizers, as suggested by the ex-post. Police enforcement. Zambia police might restrict access to the burial site or arrest organizers for violating public order laws, a tactic used against PF events since 2021. Public statements. UPND leaders, including Hichilema or Kabesha, would justify the move as lawful. 8. Makebi Zulu's response and Makebi legal stand. Zulu's response combines legal acumen with political theater, aiming to defeat the government in court and public opinion. Legal arguments. Constitutional violations. Zulu would cite Articles 18, 19, and 23, Assembly, Culture, Association, arguing the government's move infringes on fundamental rights. He'd frame the burial as a private act, not a public threat. Abuse of power. Zulu might accuse the state of misusing the Public Order Act, citing cases like Malundika versus State, 1996, where restrictive laws were struck down. He'd seek a judicial review of any orders. Cultural rights. Invoking Zambia's customary law, Zulu could argue the family's right to bury their kin trumps state control, appealing to traditional sentiment. Court tactics. Injunction. Zulu would file for an urgent injunction to allow the burial, arguing irreparable harm if delayed. Zambia's High Court, not Pretoria, is the likely venue. Amicus briefs. He might enlist NGOs or traditional leaders to file supporting briefs, broadening the case's legitimacy. Delay strategy. If outmaneuvered, Zulu could prolong litigation to keep the issue alive, pressuring UPND politically. Political response. Media blitz. Zulu would use Zambia Reports, Kaswi, or X to denounce UPND, framing the dispute as an attack on dignity. His rhetoric would target PF's base and swing voters. Public rallies. He might encourage protests, though carefully to avoid arrests, leveraging PF's urban strongholds. Victim narrative. By highlighting the family's plight, e.g. Esther Lungu, Zulu would paint UPND as vindictive, echoing PF's 2021 campaign themes. Zulu's stand is a high-stakes play to protect the burial and bolster PF's political revival. 9. Public reactions across Zambia. Public reactions to the burial dispute would be be intense and varied, reflecting Zambia's regional, ethnic, political, and social divides. Regional variations. Northern Province, Bemba as a PF stronghold. This region would likely see protests if the burial is seen as Lungu's or Bemba figures. Chiefs like Mpipo might intervene, decrying state disrespect. Southern Province, Tonga UPND's base here might back the government, viewing it as curbing PF's excess. However, cultural elders could criticize if the dispute offends burial norms. Copperbelt, urban a PF-leaning area with economic grievances. Copperbelt could see unrest, especially if youths perceive UPND as provocative. Lusaka, as a mixed political hub, Lusaka's reaction would split, with PF supporters protesting and UPND rallies defending Hichilema. Social media would explode with memes and hashtags. Social groups. Youth. Zambia's youth, jobless, unemployment 20%, might join protests or online campaigns, seeing the dispute as another elite failure. X would amplify their voices. Churches. Major Christian groups like EFZ or CCZ could call for peace, urging dialogue to respect the deceased. Their influence might temper unrest. Traditional leaders. Chiefs across ethnicities would prioritize burial rites, potentially mediating or siding with the family if UPND is seen as overreaching. Civil society. Groups like TIZ or Amnesty Zambia might criticize both sides, warning of democratic erosion. Their statements could sway urban moderates. Media and social media. X and media. X would be flooded with hashtag #LetUsBury or hashtag UPND tyranny hashtags, with PF pushing victimhood and UPND law and order narratives. Partisan outlets. ZNBC versus Kaswi would shape perceptions. Misinformation risk. Unverified claims like the Pretoria Post could inflame tensions, with both sides spreading fake court orders or videos. Long-term impact. The public's reaction could redefine UPND-PF dynamics, with the government's handling determining whether it gains or loses or gains ground ahead of 2026. 10. Political parties' tensions rise. PF versus UPND again. The burial dispute is a microcosm of the PF-UPND rivalry, Zambia's political rivalry, a flashpoint with far-reaching implications. Historical rivalry. Roots. PF, founded by SATA in 2001, dominated from 2011 to 2021, with Lungu's tenure marked by debt and authoritarianism allegations. UPND, led by Hichilema since 2006, won in 2021 on an anti-corruption platform, but struggles with economic recovery, GDP growth 3%. Key clashes. The 2016 and 2021 elections saw violence and rigging claims, with PF accusing UPND of tribalism and UPND accusing PF of rigging. Post-2021 election, UPND's probes jailed PF figures, deepening enmity. Lungu's role. Lungu's post-presidency activism, including rallies and eligibility bids, keeps PF alive as a threat to UPND. Current dynamics. UPND's gamble. By challenging the burial, UPND aims to assert control, but risks alienating moderates. Hichilema's economic reforms, e.g. debt restructuring 2023, are under fire, and a misstep could weaken his 2026 bid. PF's opportunity. PF, split by factions, Lungu versus Mailisu versus Sampa, sees the dispute as a unifying cause. A successful burial could revive Lungu's urban base and attract defectors. Ethnic regional risks. The dispute could deepen Bemba-Tonga divides, with PF's northern base and UPND's southern strongholds clashing. Chiefs' involvement might mitigate or worsen this. Risks of escalation. Protests and violence. PF's history of mobilizing youths, e.g. 2020 gassing riots, suggests protests could turn deadly. UPND's heavy-handed policing risks escalation. Electoral fallout. A 2026 election costlier dispute could cost UPND swing voters or embolden PF, but a PF overreach might alienate moderates. International pressure. SADC or AU might intervene if unrest grows, urging dialogue. UPND's democratic image, fragile after 2024 by-election arrests, is at stake. The PF versus UPND tension reflects Zambia's broader struggle for democratic maturity, with the burial as a test of both sides' restraint. 11. Final thoughts. What happens next? The burial dispute's resolution will shape Zambia's political trajectory, with several scenarios possible outcomes. Short-term scenarios. Court victory for government. Kabesha secures an injunction, delaying the burial until state conditions are met. PF protests but lacks momentum, and UPND consolidates control. Risk. Public backlash and PF's legal appeals prolong the crisis. Court victory for PF. Zulu wins an injunction, allowing the burial to proceed. PF capitalizes, holding a high-profile funeral to rally supporters. Risk. UPND tightens restrictions on PF, escalating arrests or bans. Compromise. Traditional leaders or civil society mediate, allowing a scaled-down burial with state oversight. Both sides claim victory, diffusing tensions temporarily. Risk. Neither side side is satisfied fully, fueling future disputes. Escalation. Protests erupt if either side rejects court rulings, leading to violence in Lusaka or Copperbelt. SADC or AU pressure for dialogue, with possible sanctions on travel bans. Risk. Zambia's democratic gains erode, hurting investor confidence. Long-term implications. Judicial precedent. The case will clarify state versus private roles in funerals, impacting future high-profile events. A clear ruling could stabilize, but ambiguity risks repeat conflicts. Political realignment. UPND's handling could solidify its base or weaken moderates, while PF's success depends on unifying factions. The dispute could spawn new alliances or splits. Cultural norms. Respect for funerals is sacrosanct, and UPND misstep could alienate chiefs, a key electoral bloc. PF's exploitation risks politicizing sacred rites, alienating neutrals.